Kevin Gordon here from Autosavant.com with a video walkthrough of the 2012 Suzuki Kizashi. This model is the GTS all-wheel drive Sport Edition, which to get all-wheel drive in the Kizashi means you also get the continuously variable transmission. One of those things that separates the Kizashi from a lot of the other all-wheel drive cars, if not almost all of them in the class, is the fact that the all-wheel drive system isn't on all the time. It's actually activated by pressing a little switch here on the dashboard. We're now in all-wheel drive. You really can't tell any difference. We're not in all-wheel drive anymore. I did have a chance to drive the car in some wintry mixed conditions, and to be honest, I never actually needed to activate the all-wheel drive system. The Kizashi, in my opinion, is possibly the best looking little sedan out today. It's been around for a couple of years now, and I think it's aged extremely gracefully. Everybody who's seen this car is shocked at how pretty it is. It's sculpted. The proportions of, the double oval, right? So the oval for the hood and the trunk and the oval for the roof really align nicely. I think if anything, it's got a little bit extra front overhang in front of the front wheels if you look at it from the side profile. But really, it's a very pretty and well-sculpted car. There's a lot of attention to detail. In this sport model, you get nice chrome side trims. They call it an aero kit, but really, it's just a few accented features. You get a little trunk spoiler and a bit of a more aggressive front air dam on it. This car also has optional paint on it. It's, I think, about $300. And it's a gorgeous paint job. It's actually, of all the cars I've seen on the road, the closest thing that you can buy to the super silver that you'll find on the Nissan GTR, I think, on a road-going car. Understandably, with the exception of, the exotic brands and things that'll cost you well into the six-figure mark. The Kizashi is sized, as a mid-sized car in some ways, but really, in today's world, it's really more sized like a compact car. The rear seat legroom is not huge and the interior dimensions are not giant. I have always thought about this car to be similar to the old Acura TSX, which was the Accord in Europe. It's the concept that the European cars were always smaller than the American versions, and for some people it's a neat feature. Unfortunately, as been proven by the new Jetta and Passat, Americans don't really agree. They really do seem to go for size over, packaging and quality in a lot of ways. Ride and handling on this car is excellent. It's as good as anything in its class. It's always described, and unfortunately it's become an actual adjective these days, as sort of Germanic in its ride and handling characteristics. And I think that's a fair description for this car. On the highway at super legal speeds, it's quiet, it feels hunkered down. Again, this car with the sport package does have a centimeter lower suspension than the standard car, and touring suspension bits on it beyond that, and it really does do an excellent job. It corners flat, it brakes with no brake dive. The steering isn't anything to write home about. It's still a hydraulic system, so you don't have any of that electronic completely artificialness. You can tell what's going on, and it turns in pretty quickly. Again, nothing spectacular, but a good feeling car to steer around a twisty back road. Okay, so we've gone through the good. I think the Kizashi is a good looking car. It handles well, it rides comfortably and quietly. What's not been so good? Well, the one thing there's two things that are glaringly bad on this car. One, I've filled it up twice. The first time, I'll admit, was the first tank was a really rough tank on a car. I did some of the video work for it during that tank. I drove it almost 100% in the city and was in no ways nice to it. It got 20 miles to the gallon, which gave me, I didn't run it to empty, but I only got about 240 miles to the first tank. In this second tank, it's been far more favorable. Excuse me. And I'm seeing 22.3 miles per gallon, which puts it right above its city rating for the car. And I really thought that I would see 24, 25 miles per gallon for this tank. So it's definitely come up short. And I don't know if that's a result of the CVT, even though it's rated the same as the manual per the EPA, or if it's the all-wheel drive system, even though I would assume because it's detached, the only penalty of the all-wheel drive system is the little bit of extra weight it's got to haul around. The other disappointing thing about this car is this CVT, the continuously variable transmission. They tried. I mean, I've yet to be in a car that I would have picked a CVT over a conventional torque converter automatic, as a step up above a CVT, and then of course a dual clutch setup, like are becoming more common these days, as the best pick if you've got to have something other than a manual. I've driven this car as the manual with just front wheel drive at press events, and it comes across as what could be considered as sporty. With the CVT, it just fails the car in execution. It whines a little bit at low speeds. It mutes any performance there is. They did give it a few interesting features. It's got both paddle shifters to go through the fake set of ratios that it would, 6 of them. And, it's got manual mode with the stick, which, as a bit of an aside, I will give Suzuki credit. It works correctly. I don't care what anybody else says. This is the way the stick shift, if there's going to be one, connected to a manual transmission should work. You push forward to shift down, and you pull backwards to shift up. Why, you may ask? Well, it's a natural thing. As you accelerate, it pulls your arm which way? Back. And as you brake, so, the common thing is that up is plus and back is minus, because I guess positive being above negative on the thing makes more visual sense to people. But from a driving perspective, at least they got that point right. So I have to give them, a half a star there. But this CVT is really disappointing in such a competent little chassis of a car. Interior comfort in here is good. The gauges are clear, if not very simple. What I would say is the interior of this car now feels dated, in all honesty. It's, simple in here, but there's not a lot going on from design elements. Does have dual zone climate control, and the Kizashi comes in a wide variety of flavors. For a car that's as low volume as it is, you have to give Suzuki credit for what I think is 8 different models that you can buy this car in, all the way from a simple, base model, all the way up to the sort of limited version of this car with all-wheel drive and the CVT. From a stereo and electronics perspective, there's not a ton in here. With this car, it does have the additional Bluetooth kit, which is a full-out standalone option on this car, and it is $250. The other options on this car are a subfloor organizer in the trunk, premium metallic paint, as I said, which is only $130, premium floor mats and cargo mat for $210, which brings the total vehicle price of this car to $26,404. When I actually built it online, I didn't get exactly the same price, I don't think, but it's right in that ballpark. So it's not inexpensive in any way. The top level version of this car gets up to almost $29, and I believe it starts from the base model in the 22s. AM/FM, it has an XM button, but the XM module is a dealer installed extra, and it's $560, which is it's a significant expense when XM these days is becoming more and more prevalent. Again, it's sort of an indication of the fact that this car is aging, in its product run, and it wasn't really designed to have XM built into it from the beginning. It does have a port down here for USB audio and a convenient place for you to plug a phone in. In the center console, there's another port plug there for powering other devices. Pairing the phone worked pretty well. It's one of the, vocal-based systems because there's no sort of nav display to walk you through it, or even more advanced LCD display up here. But I did get through it without ever looking at the manual. There are a few odd things, like there's a button for USB, which will take you directly to the connected version of your phone, and you probably can't see it, but right now, lit up on the stereo is both USB and Bluetooth. Well, the question is if you want to go to Bluetooth audio, how do you do that? It's actually a second push on the button that says CD, but there's no additional label on there to say like other auxiliary. Typically, it'd be like USB and aux is the button that switches between those two things. The final point for this car is an unavoidable one, and it's the fact that the Suzuki dealer network just is not that big. As a result, not many people know of this car, let alone have ever even seen one to notice it. I think everybody who encountered this car during the week that I had it was a bit surprised that it was a Suzuki, and they really didn't know that they made this car. So, depending on how you look at it, that can be a plus or a minus. It does, for 26 and a half, you get some uniqueness in a car. You're not going to look like everybody out there who's in a Jetta. I think to sum this car up, it's an extremely capable chassis that in the manual version with front-wheel drive can be entertaining to drive and a comfortable place to really spend some long highway miles. But with the CVT, it's a bit let down, and I would highly encourage you, if you're considering this car, to spend a long time test driving to make sure that you're happy with the way it works. So there you go, a quick video walkthrough of the 2012 Suzuki Kizashi GTS all-wheel drive with the CVT. I'm Kevin Gordon from Autosavant.com, and I look forward to talking to you soon.